The pressure on Suella Braverman is still there, though the newspapers don't seem to reflect it today. The newspapers give the impression that the European courts are about to back down. Suella Braverman stands in Rwanda smiling or looking at the president saying, "It's a blessing." And I don't understand, actually. Yvette Cooper, the shadow Home Secretary, says that the scheme, the Rwanda scheme, I think we should keep up that word scheme, because that seems to me to be what it is. The Rwanda scheme is unworkable and unethical, an expensive PR stunt. It's a distraction. Congo, which has its own problems. Congo has pointed to serious human rights concerns, and Rwanda has actually refused to take in refugees from Congo. But I mean, if you start looking at the scoreboard of alleged abuses, it's quite alarming that we're even talking to this country about hosting our refugees and effectively representing our duty abroad. Rwanda is controlled now by the ruling Rwandan Patriotic Front, and it's accused regularly of repressing dissent. The opposition to the ruling party is very limited. High-profile critics have gone missing. For example, Innocent Bahiti, a YouTube poet who disappeared completely in February after being arrested. People have been arrested, of course, and people have been threatened. The record on LGBTQ plus rights is very poor. And also there's accounts of the repression of sex workers, the mistreatment of street children, the existence of what are called safe houses where detainees are tortured and imprisoned. And those who expose the shortcomings of the government, like, for example, people like Christopher Kayumba, who ran a newspaper, and shortly after making these allegations, he found himself accused of rape, arrested. He claims the charges are politically motivated, and he remains in Nyarugenge prison in Kigali without bail. There's strict rules limiting free debate, especially about COVID lockdown, the Rwandan 1994 genocide, and there are so many allegations of crimes by the ruling RPF party. Yvonne Idamange, who is a Tutsi genocide survivor, made allegations, was arrested. Her trial was held behind closed doors on charges simply of spreading rumors, and it's led to a 15-year sentence. This is the sort of thing, frankly, that you hear in modern Russia. And yet we're going to trust these people to carry out our human rights. It is quite extraordinary. Victoire Ingabire, whose supporters were detained in October for spreading rumors again. Paul Rusé Sabagina, captured and returned to Rwanda in a very strange way to face what observers called an unfair trial. And the influence of Rwanda goes beyond its borders. There are stories of threats to Rwandan refugees in Australia, in Mozambique, in Belgium. I could go on. And these people claim that the Rwandan authorities have been given access to and have been using the NSO Pegasus spyware. And again, they're threatening Rwandans. The obsession with rumors is, to me, something like the obsession that one finds in Russia. And I think it's very, very worrying that we are on the cusp of sending vulnerable individuals to live in Rwanda. That's number one. Number two is just simply the idea that we are transferring our responsibility to another nation. That seems to me to be extremely questionable ethically. And at what point do we get involved if it goes wrong? At what point do we rescue these refugees from Rwanda if the Rwandan system proves to be incompatible with our standards of human rights? At what point? So, for example, if this were to go ahead and the Labour Party were to get into power and repeal the legislation or change the legislation, would we then see the refugees who have been sent to Rwanda return to Britain? I don't understand how we engineer any form of change to this Rwandan policy should it go ahead, and I don't quite understand how it can go ahead. There are questions about the standards of human rights in Rwanda. There are questions about whether or not this policy itself is ethically appropriate from our point of view. So it wouldn't matter whether we were transferring people to Rwanda or to Belgium. Is it right for us to move our problems to another country, to transfer our problems to another country, even should that country be willing to accept refugees? So those two questions are the big ones. Rwanda's record of human rights, which is not good, and the more philosophical question about whether or not we can legitimately transfer somebody to another country. It goes beyond the legal option. Legally, I'm sure Suella Braverman is making it quite clear that we can transfer somebody. Morally, should we? Ethically, should we? That's the bigger question, and that's the one which will dominate, I think.